Stomped is a simple game where, after choosing amongst a variety of different characters, you are dropped into a large platform-filled arena. The task is simple. Stomp on other players to collect their points and grow, and try to become the largest in the map. The community has since expanded on this, introducing alternative ways to play the game, including teaming with other players, hunting down the leader, achieving scores in the extreme range, or simply just playing for fun with no objective at all, other than enjoyment. While this all seems rather mundane at first glance, it is anything but. The Stomped community, while being on the smaller side, is a close group of people that goes way back many years and have watched each other grow not only as a player, but a person as well. While I could expand on this and delve deeper into the community's history, that is not the topic I will be covering in this video today. Today we'll be going over something else, something much darker and more twisted than the usual lighthearted fun of the game. Upon all the historical moments and events of Stomped that everyone knows, there are other less known but just as important events. Events that appear to have been overlooked by everyone. There have been a handful of players who, while playing, uncovered things that they shouldn't have. Things that do not belong in a game as simple and innocent as Stomped. Unfortunately, I was never able to contact any of these players as they have since moved on and their whereabouts now are unknown. They did leave their sightings behind though, and these sightings all contain stories and various forms of proof of strange occurrences in Stomped that today are still mostly unexplainable. Occurrences that make you wonder just how deep does this game really go? And today I will be going to present the old posts and reports about these anomalies and try to bring the attention to them that they deserve. Now, let's explore the darkest, most unknown corners of the game we all think we know too well. Stomped.io. The start of our journey takes us to early 2019, where the first sighting of a Stomped anomaly is reported. Very little is known about this screenshot other than that it was taken sometime in the same year the story was posted and that it was found on the popular platform known as Quora. This was the only post by the user Perforator922. Their account, along with their posts, must have since been deleted because they can no longer be found anywhere on the website. As far as we know, Perforator is the first player to have an unusual encounter in the game. This is what they wrote. Something strange happened while I was playing Stomped. Any explanations? I'm kind of new to this game, and I don't know exactly how it works or how popular it is here, but I really can't think of anywhere else to say this. I was playing alone in the US East servers. It was fairly late at night, so there were no other players on. I was going for 5,000 points, but as I was getting big, something very weird happened. This medium-sized player appeared in my screen, but it had a very strange skin. It was solid black with no features at all, and it moved much faster than everyone else. I tried to screenshot, but my computer would not respond to my attempts, so I have no proof other than my word. I chased it and eventually managed to trap it in the lower west corner, but when I tried to kill it, it caused my entire computer to crash and turn off, and I couldn't get it to turn back on until the next morning. What was this? Is this a glitch or a hacker? Has anyone else experienced this? Can someone help me? While analyzing this story, it is important to note that they were the only actual player in the server, which logically would increase their chance of encountering something unusual. Based on what Perforator said about the incident, they appear to have been attacked by a malicious entity, as when they trapped in the lower west corner, or as most players call it, the left corner, and interacted with it, the effects exceeded just the game and messed with their entire PC, preventing them from screenshotting and presumably preventing them from recording the anomaly, as well as force shutting down their whole computer. Another thing to notice is that they describe the entity as being solid black and much faster than them and the rest of the bots in the server, indicating that it doesn't follow the game's code. What exactly is this thing? Perforator gives a few suggestions such as a glitch or a hacker, but those don't seem to fit. To my knowledge, most if not all glitches should affect the game only, not the whole system the player is using. And as for hackers, one, it would take an extremely advanced hacker to bend the game that much, let alone mess with your whole system, and two, hackers have no reason to target Stomped as they will make no financial gain from it. So whatever this thing is, it's most likely something else. But what? Maybe our next report will shed some more light on the matter. Unfortunately for Perforator, and for us as well, their post received little to no attention at all. Our next reported encounter takes us to around the summer or early fall of 2019 by an unknown user who posted a picture on Reddit with the only context being a single word: what? At first glance, the image just appears to be a bright flash reflecting off a rather dirty looking screen, but if you look closely, you can notice that the picture taken appears to be of a stomped player who is AFK in the left corner. The yellow name above their head shows that whoever posted this image is a player controlling this character, who most likely took their hands off the keyboard to take the picture. The really interesting thing, however, is on the other side of the image. Though it is difficult to see, you can still make out another player in the picture, or at least the silhouette of one. Whatever this thing is, it clearly matches the description of the entity that Perforator claimed to see: solid black and shadowy with no discernible features. Though it's difficult to tell, the strange entity seems to have no nickname displayed above its head either. Now may be a good time to say that to my knowledge there are no secret skins that turn you solid black. And even if there were, that would not explain the strange effects this entity has on the player's devices. Another thing to point out is that in the first report, Perforator said that they were unable to screenshot the event. The same thing can be inferred here, as the user took a picture from a phone or other device, which implies that their screenshot function was not working. It would have been much more clear and helpful if they had not used the camera flash, but they most likely just forgot to turn it off in haste to get the picture. This screenshot is all that remains of this sighting. Who posted it, exactly when it was posted, and what happened to them is all unknown. My assumption is that it had negative effects on the device they were using, just like the sighting prior to this one. As much as I wish there was more context to this post, it is certain that this user encountered the same entity as Perforator before them. Our third sighting takes us all the way to somewhere around the late spring or early summer of 2020 by a former player known as Pola. Similar to Perforator, and most likely the unknown user who experienced the second encounter, Pola's encounter was also in the late of night, according to her. She was recording a video of her doing a challenge when something unusual happens. This is her recording. Video starts off normal enough, simply Pola recording her challenge, but after a few seconds her game begins to lag heavily. Moments later the screen flashes black and these thick scan lines appear out of nowhere. Then, just as quickly as they appeared, they vanished and the lag ended. However, when providing the video, Pola stated that after the occurrence, her character would no longer respond to any controls, causing it to die rather quickly. Though she has no proof of this, she claims that when she died, the death screen had those same thick scan lines that had appeared earlier. She had no idea what happened, and she continued to play the game for a few months after and had no similar incidents. She faded away from the stomped community, and her whereabouts now are unknown. What I find strange is that there is one other thing in the video that Pola did not address, and it is probably the most important thing. Whether she didn't notice it or just didn't want to talk about it is unclear, but if you look to the far right during the part of the clip with the lag and scan lines, a strange entity appears on her screen for a few frames before seemingly turning around and vanishing out of sight. It appears to be light beige or pale yellow in color, with thick black X textures on its face, body, and each of its legs. Similar to the first shadow entity, this skin is not accessible to players and seems to have come from nowhere. Whatever this thing was, it most definitely has something to do with Pola's screen glitching, as well as her losing control of her character. If it wasn't already obvious, whatever this entity is, it is something much different from the previous shadow one. This new one, which I'll just call X, seems to make you lag and cause your screen to bug and have strange effects, as well as causing your character to quit responding to the controls. However, it doesn't seem to have any ability to mess with anything outside the game, as unlike encountering the shadow entity, it appears that you are still able to use all of your device's external functions, such as screenshotting and screen recording. Interactions with X appear to only have lingering effects in-game and not on your device itself. So what are these strange entities and why do they exist? These questions will most likely never be fully answered. These next screenshots are a conversation between two people on what appears to be Google Hangouts or a similar chat room. The dates are censored, as well as the names and profile pictures of the users, most likely for privacy, so I'll just refer to them as Player A and Player B. The original source is unknown, but the screenshot dates imply that the event took place somewhere in December of 2020. In the first screenshot, Player A is telling Player B that he saw that weird shadow skin, and describes that it chased him and ultimately caused his computer to freeze. From this message exchange alone, it is obvious that this is undoubtedly the same dark entity that was previously encountered by others, as Player A describes it as a shadow skin, claims it was faster than him, and also states that it made his computer freeze. It is also heavily implied that he has encountered this entity at least once before, as in the first message he says he saw it again, and Player B then asks if it was the one that made his computer overheat. Unfortunately, there is no other known information about Player A's first encounter with the entity other than that it made his computer overheat. The second screenshot is mostly just them talking about the after effects of the encounter, but Player B does bring up the suggestion that this thing could be a virus of some kind. But what kind of virus and how does it work? This question remains unanswered. The third and final screenshot has an image sent by Player A, I believe. I am assuming this picture has some sort of relation to the interaction with the shadow entity, but the quality is just too poor to tell. Judging by the confusing transition between the last two screenshots, I'm assuming that there's another screenshot of messages that's supposed to take place between them, most likely expanding on Player B's idea of how the shadow entity could possibly be a virus, but those messages appear to have been lost. Regardless, we can piece together from this conversation that yet another shadow entity encounter occurred, and whoever Player A is has interacted with it once before this. There could be many more of these types of sightings that just went unreported. We will most likely never know. The next report is by an unknown user on an unknown website. The screenshot is simply an image with the caption, "Please help. I was playing Stomped right after and came across an unusual behaving player, and it made my whole computer lock up. I got it to unlock, and now the entire left side of my screen and my tabs and extensions are all glitched out by this thing that kind of resembles the Stomped map. My mouse, keyboard, and computer functions are all working just fine, but no matter what I do, I can't fix the screen. That weird player in the game definitely had something to do with it. Any tips?" This appears to be yet another shadow entity encounter because, though the user did not say anything about the appearance of the entity, the after effects it left on their computer pretty much give it away. As stated in the sort of strangely worded caption, the very top and entire left side of their screen seem to be glitched out by a line pattern with a stomped background color scheme, as well as bright green and yellow vertical lines that become thinner and more spaced out the further left you look. A large group of stars in the formation of a plus sign is visible on the glitched out portion of the screen. There's not much else to be said about this sighting, as it is basically just like the previous ones where the shadow entity is spotted and stresses out the player's devices, so much that it either overheats, force restarts, locks up, or glitches out. This, however, does not appear to be the first sighting where permanent damage occurred to the user's computer. Our next post is by far one of the most interesting ones yet. A small YouTuber known as Legion S posted this to their community section sometime in the early spring of 2021, which can be concluded due to the fact that the date of the screenshot taken was in November 2021, and at the time the post date read 8 months ago. This was their post. Stomped.io log 2. After the encounter with the monster stomped person, my computer began to glitch, and then when everything stopped glitching, I was in this weird map with a yellow screen and black stars. I pressed the arrow keys and mouse, but I could not move. The description then cuts off to the read more sign. Now, despite Legion's poor spelling, grammar, and word choice, you can clearly configure what they are saying. The very first thing to notice is that this is their stomped log 2, which indicates that there was a log 1 that was similar to this, most likely describing Legion's encounter with the monster stomped person in greater detail. Basically, they explain that they glitched and were transported into a weird place with a yellow background, as the attached image below clearly displays. Legion states that they tried to move, but could not. Though this could mean that they simply lost control of their character like Pola did, I believe what Legion means by this is that his character was suspended in midair and literally could not move. The story cuts off here by the Read More button, which is unfortunate as there could have been much more information here to uncover. Now let's analyze the screenshot that's attached to the message. Legion appears to be in a heavily altered version of Stomped with a background texture similar to that of the original Stomped, but flipped and colored a bright, ugly yellow. Large black stars with glowing red auras are scattered about the screen, as well as a singular larger star with more of a magenta glow. The ledges here are much wider and spaced farther apart than the ones in the Stomped we know, and are all tilted at about a 10-degree angle. Laying on one of the ledges appears to be a deflated, pale corpse of a former Stomped character. It has a faint red aura emanating from it, which vaguely hints what will happen if you touch one of those red stars. The final two things to notice are the map and the leaderboard. The map, while still being present, appears to be broken and does not show Legion's location. The leaderboard is rather difficult to make out, but you can still tell that there are 3 other players present. The lower 2 are both unnamed. Perhaps those are the bodies of the deceased players in the map. The top one, however, is at an impossibly high score with a simple name, X. I can almost guarantee you that this is the same X entity we discussed earlier, or at least related to it in some way. A theory I have is that ever since the creation of the game, X has dragged random players into this strange altered version and traps them there, where eventually the player will touch a red star and decompose, where X then sucks out their score growing from it. The nearly 4,000 points it carries on the leaderboard is the combined score of all the players it has trapped and killed there. The impacts the larger magenta stars have, I have no idea. Although this is just a theory and could very well be false. Also, it's important to note that while many signs point to X being behind this encounter, there are small hints that the shadow entity could be involved as well. The stars, while having different colored glows, are black at their core, which is more shadow-themed, as well as the Legion claiming that their entire computer glitched, not just their game. And as far as we know, the shadow entity is the only one capable of glitching out whole computers. But Legion has proven not to be the best when it comes to anything grammar-related, so they very well may have just meant their game. The final detail about the sighting that is important not to overlook is Legion's profile picture. It appears to be an image of X, which clearly displays that Legion either got the image from an unknown source or has encountered X before and obtained either screenshot or video proof. This is all most likely related to their first Stomped log, whatever it is. While we obtained a lot of interesting proof here and some possible information about X, this was a majorly missed opportunity due to the fact that Legion's Stomped log 1 is nowhere to be seen, as well as we can only see the very first portion of their Stomped log 2. Whoever this Legion person is, they seem to be very experienced with X and would definitely be able to give loads of more information, if we could find them. It is quite unclear what exactly happened to Legion in their YouTube channel, but they seem to no longer have an online presence anywhere. This is an unnerving trend I have noticed while uncovering these strange sightings. So far, every player who has experienced an anomaly like this seems to have disappeared from the internet a short period of time later. Are these strange encounters and entities responsible for this, or is it something else? Our next report is on Reddit by a mother who types about an experience she had while watching her daughter play Stomped. The date of the post is unknown, but the date of the screenshot was in early June of 2021, so I'm putting it here in the timeline, though it could be older. The server this post was created in was already censored for some reason, but the mother's username wasn't. I censored that myself because her username on Reddit is her real name, and I do not want to violate her privacy. Though the screenshot of this report is of poor quality, it's still possible to make out what she said. Stomped.io is not safe. I am typing this on my mobile device to try to inform anyone who reads this that Stomped contains something malicious beyond my understanding and should be avoided. I'm not sure exactly how something so dangerous could end up in such an innocent-looking, supposedly safe game. My 5-year-old daughter was playing Stomped on my work PC before bed, as she usually does. While I'm not too familiar with the game, I've watched her play it enough to understand it, and if something isn't right. One night she was playing, recording a video for her YouTube channel, when I heard her complain that her screen recorder randomly cut out while she was at a high score. We tried to turn the recorder back on, but it wouldn't respond. All the while, she was trying to keep her character alive because, as previously mentioned, she was at a high score. While I was researching about why a Windows screen recorder would randomly stop working, my daughter remarked about how there must have been a new update where a new skin was added, and she pointed at the screen. There was a player with a strange, solid black texture there next to her. In my time watching her play, I had never seen any characters like this. After a few seconds, my PC began to get really loud and the game became really laggy, as if my computer suddenly began to struggle to run it. I tried to shut it off, but the power button wouldn't respond. Then, without warning, my PC began to smoke and caught fire. Luckily, I managed to quickly put it out with a fire extinguisher, but now my computer is ruined and I have to look for another one. My PC was fairly new and had zero issues prior to this. I feel like whatever that strange thing was that appeared in my daughter's game is responsible for this. I have been trying to contact the developer of the game to address the issue, but he won't respond to any of my emails. From now on, me and my daughter are going to be more careful about the websites we visit, and we advise you all reading this to do the same. This, by far, is the most extreme report yet and is undoubtedly a shadow entity encounter, as the mother describes there being a player with a strange, solid black texture on screen a few seconds before her PC catches fire. Luckily, her and her daughter were okay, but this shows just how dangerous this thing really is. The shadow entity has proven multiple times that just by making its appearance, it can cause a variety of different effects to happen to your device, some more severe than others. It can cause normal computer functions to stop working, as well as causing them to crash, freeze, and now burst into flames. Why exactly is this? One of my beliefs is that the shadow entity is something so advanced, so complex, that most computers have extreme difficulty simply rendering it. What sort of malicious entity or code is lurking behind that shadowy black texture? This experience perfectly shows just how dangerous and threatening this specific entity really is. While it's just a mysterious character in an IO game, the effects it has on your device could cost you thousands of dollars or even burn down your house if you're really unlucky. This post quite obviously did not receive the attention the mother wanted it to receive, but hopefully it will gain a bit of publicity now that I'm sharing it. Our next sighting, believe it or not, is a screenshot of an Instagram post from August 27th, 2021 by a girl named Tessa. I censored her profile picture and account for this video for privacy reasons. Why she would post something about Stomped on her personal account, I don't know. Anyway, this one is different from anything that has been covered yet, and it consists of a single image along with a short description. Here is her post. Upon looking at the image, any Stomped player knows that there's something very off about the character Tessa has trapped in the left corner. It appears to have a blue outline with glowing white eyes and is completely see-through, as you can see the background through it. But strangely, the colors of the background within the character's outline are inverted into high contrast mode. You can tell because if you turn the image to negative, the space inside the entity's outline becomes the normal colors of the background. Because of the blue rims and see-through body, I am calling it the glass entity. Based on what Tessa says in her post description, she was in the left corner and the glass entity fell down from above her, and after lingering for a few seconds, phased through the left wall and disappeared. Unlike X and the shadow entity, this one doesn't seem to have any effects on Tessa's device or gameplay, as she was able to successfully screenshot the anomaly without there being any weird glitches, and she didn't mention anything about her device overheating, malfunctioning, or anything of the like. Sadly, the image and description leaves us with basically no information or general idea of what the glass entity is or what it's capable of, other than that it exists, does not appear on the leaderboard, and seemingly has no effects on Tessa's gameplay or device. It also has the ability to phase through solid objects, or the map border walls at least. Where it goes or what it does beyond these walls, nobody knows. Tessa's status is currently unknown, as her Instagram account has been inactive for nearly 7 months, and she doesn't appear to be on any other social media platforms. Just like the rest of the users who have reported incidents, her online presence seems to have just vanished. Did she simply get bored with games and social media, or is something else going on? Based on the previous encounters, my predictions lean more toward the latter. Now we are in late October of 2021, not long before the beginning of the time period where the safety certificate went down, also known as the CDE era, preventing many players from entering the game. A not very well known player called Wyvern was recording some gameplay. He claims that everything was going normal, but then the server speed began to slow and a series of very strange glitches followed. This is his recording. While the video does indeed seem like normal gameplay at first, within the first few seconds the server speed seems to slow to a crawl. You can tell it's the entire server lagging rather than just Wyvern because his screen isn't choppy at all. A few seconds later, the screen darkens and a series of slightly transparent scan lines appear, similar to Pola's encounter. After this, various glitch effects begin to erupt all over Wyvern's screen and the background begins to flash a bright, blinding yellow. This occurs for just a few seconds before everything seemingly goes back to normal just as quick as it got weird. Wyvern, spooked at what had just happened, closed his tab instantly after, thus ending his recording. As if its clear sighting during the flashing yellow sequence wasn't enough, this is obviously an X attack, as the glitches and weird events all stayed within the game and did not affect Wyvern's computer in any way. One thing to take note of is that the yellow flashes are nearly, if not the same color as the background of the image in Legion's sighting, where X was present. My interpretation is that while Wyvern was playing, X tried to pull him into its flipped yellow dimension, where it would then use its black stars to kill him and siphon his points. However, X's attempt failed and everything resumed normally. What I noticed though is that during Pola's encounter only she lags, while in Wyvern's encounter the whole server lags. Does this mean that X slowed down the entire server to try and transport every player and bot into its dimension at the same time? Another thing to recognize is that during Pola's encounter, X is in the same server as her and is much smaller, while during Wyvern's encounter, X appears to be in its own dimension, implied by it being behind the purple arch design of the normal stomped background, and it is much larger. This is most likely a sign that X is much more powerful in its own dimension than it is in others, but that's still up for debate, as is most of the theories and assumptions from these sightings. At last, we arrive to spring of 2022, the time of the latest documented encounter. And I have a lot to say about this one because this is my experience and what intrigued me into researching more about all of this, which is what I've been doing during a lot of my free time for quite a while now, uncovering these previous reports that, until recently, have been overlooked. At the time, I wasn't aware of any of these entities or alternate dimensions or their dangers. I never told anyone about this encounter, not even my closest friends. But now I am presenting it for all of you to hear. It was late one night, and having nothing else to do, I decided to go for a high score. Unfortunately, well into my run, my internet went out, causing me to get freezy legs, which every player has experienced at some point, and despite its name, freezy legs is what I call it when everything on your screen freezes except your legs, which continue to move. This is usually caused by internet outages or server crashes. Anyway, I sat and waited for the game to kick me, as it usually does when my internet goes out, so I could see my final stats. Strangely though, it never kicked me, and for several minutes I just stared blankly at the screen. I was about to give up and close the tab when suddenly a loud buzzing noise erupted from my Chromebook speakers for a moment. At the same time, my screen unfroze and I watched in confusion as my character began to move again in a very choppy motion for a second before my entire screen momentarily glitched out. When the weird noises and glitching faded, I found that my character was still alive and the lag was gone, but something was way off. I was in a very strange place. Everything was dark and super barren, with no ledges or stars at all, only a brown-colored floor. I appeared to be the only one in this strange server, as I was the only player listed on the leaderboard. I tried to take screenshots of this unusual scape, but every time I tried, my computer would not screenshot, and instead just respond with a grinding sound that made me flinch. On the third screenshot attempt, the grinding sound became continuous and did not go away. Although I was worried about my Chromebook and what was wrong with it, at the time I did not connect it to the strange events of the game. Why should I? It's simply a game that I've played many times before, and this must be just a glitch I found. I got the idea that if I couldn't screenshot this anomaly, I would instead take pictures of it. But as I grabbed my phone and opened the camera, I noticed a flash of movement on my screen that wasn't from my own character. I looked up and saw a shadow entity which seemingly appeared out of nowhere, moving hard right at a pace faster than I could keep up with. I quickly aimed my phone at the screen and took a picture. Despite the shadow entity being faster than me, I figured since I was larger than it, I would eventually be able to trap it in the right corner and kill it, and whatever it was. It wasn't like it could go up since there were no platforms. Around this time, my Chromebook was beginning to feel hot to the touch, but my curiosity and stupidity made me keep going. After about a minute of chasing, I eventually reached the right corner, which consisted of a gap in the far right wall and a single brown ledge which was much too high to access. The shadow entity disappeared down the tunnel in the wall, and unfortunately, I was too big to follow it through. Of course, due to the lack of any life other than the shadow entity, which seemed to have no interest in fighting me, I had nothing to decrease my size with so I could enter the tunnel. At this point, my Chromebook was so hot just touching the keyboard burned my skin, and I knew this unusual occurrence had something to do with it, and I had to get out of there. To my dismay, though, the tab wouldn't close. Before I could think any further, though, a huge shadow entity appeared on my screen, now trapping me in the right corner. It came at me fast, barely giving me enough time to snap one final picture. Upon making contact with the shadow entity, my screen glitched out and I was taken to a death screen. My Chromebook cooled down rather quickly, and I was suddenly able to take screenshots again. Relieved, I began to explore the death screen, which, though consisting most of the same elements of a normal death screen, also had some oddities, the first one being the daily leaderboard. The top 7 scores on this leaderboard are all far from reachable in the Stomped we know, with the top 3 scores all being peculiarly close together. Sadly, when I tried to click on weekly and monthly, neither one responded. One strange thing here is that all of these scores are by players with no names, and they all end in the number 4. All of them except one. Though this seems like the realm of the shadow entity, or entities, seeing as I could have possibly encountered 2, it's clear that X was here as well. Not only this, but X's score is the only one that doesn't end in the number 4. What the significance of 4 is, or if it's just a bizarre coincidence, I do not know and probably never will. Upon looking at my death screen stats, I noticed that they were way off. I did not only live for 3 minutes, and I most definitely stomped way more than 0 people. What I believe is that upon transferring dimensions, or whatever I did, all of my stats reset, except for the score, since I took that with me to this place. One other thing to take note of is that Times Got Stomped says 1, indicating that the large shadow entity did indeed kill me, but it seemed to kill me just by physical contact, not by stomping on me. And the final thing to notice is that the usual button labeled Continue was instead labeled Quit. Upon clicking this, my entire Chromebook crashed and shut off. I was able to get it to turn back on shortly after, but when I did, I noticed that all files it had saved before April 4th of 2022 were completely erased. Why this is, I don't know, but I did notice that the 4 trend is present as well here, as April 4th can also be written as 4-4. Now that I told the story, let's further analyze the in-game pictures. While all are similar, they each have their own key differences. The first picture shows me chasing the shadow entity across a dark, empty room. The background is dark maroon in color and fades to blackness the higher up you go, and the floor appears to be an eerie brown color as opposed to the gray of the normal Stomped. We are near the right corner, as displayed on the map, and are going there at a fast pace. Though part of it is cut out at the image, it is still clear that I am the only one on the leaderboard, indicating that, apart from the shadow entity, I am the only one here. There's not much else to be said about this picture that wasn't described in the story of my experience, so moving on. In the next image, I am in the right corner. There is a strange hole in the wall that you can see the shadow entity going down. A single lone ledge of the same brown color scheme is positioned next to the far right wall. This ledge is too high up to be accessed by normal players and would require a strong boost or even 2 consecutive boosts to reach. The existence of this ledge is somewhat mysterious, as there are no other ledges throughout the entire map, or the portion that I traveled anyway. Perhaps it leads to something farther up out of my field of view, or maybe it's there for simply no reason at all. And in the final image, you can see me being forced up against the wall by a shadow entity much larger in size than me. Though it cannot be fully seen due to the darkness of this strange world, it is clear by the part that is visible that this entity is at least 3 times my size. Whether it's a different shadow entity that trapped me or the same one that fled through the tunnel and somehow came back up behind me, growing to a much larger size, I do not know. Speaking of the tunnel, there is something else interesting about it. A ways in, it appears that the background changes from a dark maroon to a dark orange tint. It is a subtle yet clear difference, too clear to just be a lighting effect on my phone camera. A thing to remember is that the dimension that appears to be home to X has a bright orange and yellow color scheme. This could be hinting that this tunnel somehow connects this dimension and X's, as maybe the further down the tunnel you go, the brighter yellow the colors get until you come out in X's map. Another thing that supports this is X's appearance on the daily leaderboard of this server. Perhaps X uses that tunnel to cross into here, and the shadow entity uses it to go to the yellow dimension. Maybe this is an indication that X and the shadow entity are somehow related after all. But how? And what of the glass entity? Does it have any relation to this as well? Most likely, more questions that will never have a clear answer. Well, that's just about all the reported encounters I could find, and the one that I experienced myself. In the end, this all just goes to show that there is much, much more to this game than most players believe, hidden away somewhere. But what are these entities players have encountered, and why do they behave the way they do? Are there even more out there that are yet to be discovered? And the same goes for the different dimensions. What are they, and how many more are somewhere out there? Why are these encounters always very glitchy, unclear, and harmful to the player's devices? Like I've been saying this whole video, all of these are questions that will probably never be answered. But I can say one thing with confidence: if you're playing alone, especially late at night, be careful. You never know what could be lurking out there.